All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Car on the Hauler, my post-race show. I am Trackside Larry, and you may be seeing this either on X, YouTube, or you're listening on Spotify. I am live every Tuesday at noon Eastern Time to talk about the previous weekend of racing that we just finished up, and we just finished up Daytona 500 weekend, and there was some thrills and some chills in Daytona Beach this past weekend. So the way this show usually goes, I'm going to break down real quick the weekend winners, the top 10 results, and take a quick look at the points battle up at the top of the standings and near the bubble to make the chase. I like calling it the chase again. So we'll go through that. Then we'll go through the Truck Series storylines, O'Reilly Series storylines, and then, of course, the Daytona 500 storylines coming out of the weekend. So let's get to these weekend winners that we had, because we had three pretty entertaining finishes, I would say. Of course, Tyler Reddick winning the big one, winning the Daytona 500. Him, Michael Jordan, 2311 Racing going to victory lane. In the O'Reilly Series, not a very big surprise, but overall I'd say an entertaining race. Maybe not, probably the worst finish I'd say out of the weekend, mainly because it wasn't a big surprise, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. Austin Hill wins the O'Reilly Series United Rentals 300, and then the Craftsman Truck Series ends up being won by Chandler Smith in the Fishmobile, winning the Fresh from Florida 250, coming out of nowhere to win that one. All right, let's take a look at the top 10 results from these three races that we had in the Cup Series. Of course, Reddick finished up top. We had Ricky Stenhouse Jr. with a second place finish, Joey Logano in third, Chase Elliott, Brad Kay. That rounds out your top five. I know the Elliott fans are hurting. We'll talk a little bit more about Elliott later. Zane Smith in sixth. We have Chris Buescher, who ran well all day, finishing seventh. Riley Herbst with, I think, his best career finish in eighth. Josh Berry in ninth. And then Bubba Wallace rounding out your top 10 in the Great American Race. In the O'Reilly Series, Austin Hill with the victory, obviously. Justin Allgaier in second. Came just short of winning the season opener at Daytona once again. Ryan Sieg in third. A great run from Jordan Anderson. Jordan Anderson seems to always do really well on the super speedways, and he had his baby in his arms in the interview. It was a pretty cool moment for him. Good to see a great finish out of Jordan Anderson. Sammy Smith gets a top five. A great run from Ryan Ellis in sixth. You have Carson Quaffle in seventh. Then you have another Jordan Anderson racing machine in Blaine Perkins in eighth. Blaine Perkins ran well all day long. I honestly thought he had a decent chance at the win at the end of that thing. Jesse Love, obviously not getting the finish he probably wanted, finishing ninth. And then Raja Karuth rounding out your top 10. And now we'll move over to the Craftsman Truck Series. We have Chandler Smith, who got the victory. Gio Ruggiero, who came so close to winning in second. Christian Eckes in third. Ty Majeski in fourth. It's gonna be tough getting used to seeing him in the Matt Crafton machine, in that number 88 Menards machine. That's going to take some getting used to. John Hunter Nemechek rounds out the top five. And then Ricky Stenhouse Jr. makes another appearance, getting a sixth place finish in the Truck Series race. We have Butterbean, Brendan Queen, finishing seventh. The Ram trucks overall ran pretty well. Justin Haley led the most laps in the Fresh from Florida 250. Kaden Honeycutt making his debut for Tricon ran well in eighth. Tyler Ankrum getting a ninth place finish, and then Stuart Friesen returning from injury. Stewie rounds out your top 10. All right, let's look at the points now exiting Daytona weekend. We'll start with the Truck Series this time. Chandler Smith leads the points. He has Christian Eckes 19 points back of him, and then Ty Majeski 20 points back of Chandler and one behind Eckes. And then we'll look at the bubble battle for the Truck Series chase. Nick Lights. I don't know if Lights is running. I don't think he's running full time unless he's filling in other places. But he's currently in the playoffs. If it would start, yes, Chase. See, I already called it the playoffs. He's in the chase already if it would start right now. Tyler Ankrum, 8th in points, 37 points back of the points lead. Stuart Friesen, 38 points back. And then the driver on the bubble, only 2 points above the cut line, is Ben Rhodes in 10th. You have Andres Perez in 11th, 2 points back. And then Cole Butcher, 3 points back of the chase cutoff. And we'll take a look at the O'Reilly series. And this is the biggest gap up to the front. Austin Hill with a 25-point advantage, leaving Daytona over Justin Allgaier. Carson Quaffle is 28 points back in third. And then we'll look at the bubble battle. Jordan Anderson, he's not running full time, but if it started right now, he would be in the chase. He's 42 points back of Austin Hill. You have Ryan Ellis, 44 points back. You have Parker Retzloff in 11th, who's 47 points back. And then you have both Viking Motorsports cars rounding out your top 12 here. Anthony Alfredo, 49 points back. And then the first person on the outside looking in is Brennan Poole, who's only 1 point back. And then Kyle Sieg, who's 4 points back in 14th. And then we'll take a look at the points for the NASCAR Cup Series leaving Daytona. You have to keep in mind these points don't just include the Daytona 500. They also include the Daytona Duels, where the top 10 finishers in each of the Daytona Duels were awarded points. So Tyler Reddick leads the standings, and Joey Logano, after both the duel winners, this really shows how much winning those duels really meant. And they also both ran really well in the Great American Race. They both got top fives. Tyler Reddick leads the points. Joey Logano is 12 points back in second. Chase Elliott is 15 points back in third. And then we'll head all the way back to 13th, where Josh Berry is 25 points back. You have Kyle Busch and Kyle Larson, both 29 points back in a tie for 14th. And then you have Noah Gragson on the cut line, 31 points back of Tyler Reddick. And then the first guy on the outside will be Michael McDowell, 1 point back. And then you have the back-to-back Daytona 500 champion, wasn't able to get it done this year, William Byron, 2 points outside of the chase. So now that we've gone through the standings, the results, quickly went through the weekend winners, let's break down some major storylines, I personally would say, from each of these races that we had over the weekend. Starting with the Craftsman Truck Series. My bad, I gotta clear my throat a little bit. Starting with the Craftsman Truck Series. Cleetus McFarland and Travis Pastrana ended up racing in this race. Two people I'm very fond of. They do a lot for when it comes to the auto, motorsports, extreme sports community. And they just have so many fans. Me personally, there's a very small handful of people that I personally would be completely starstruck if I met. And Travis Pastrana is probably the top of the list. I love Travis Pastrana. I'm quite fond of Cleetus McFarland as well. I honestly, around maybe 2 years ago is when I really began to learn about Cleetus, maybe a couple of months before he really started trying to get involved with NASCAR, right before he started that strong friendship that he had with Greg Biffle, and RIP Biff. I liked everything they did for the Biff and Denny Hamlin's family, and everybody we lost this weekend, Michael Annette, everybody that we lost during the off season. I like how we paid homage to a lot of those guys and girls and kids and everybody that we lost during the off season. I think that was really cool, including in the truck race, a lot of Greg Biffle font, same thing in the Cup race. But back to what I was talking about, Cleetus McFarland and Travis Pastrana. Pastrana ran a good race. He overall ran pretty well. I think he got a top 15. So overall, he ran a good race, stayed out of trouble pretty much all day. So good on Travis Pastrana. And Cleetus, he had major speed. He was near the top of qualifying at one point, almost ended up making round 2 of qualifying. I thought that would have been really cool. He came just short of making that. And his lack of experience in a Craftsman truck really showed at the beginning of that race, wrecking out only a couple laps into the race, just not quite sure what to do with the draft in the air. And that's one of the reasons why I personally think they should be, even though they're risking wrecking the car, they should be practicing this stuff during practice, not just qualifying runs, because that's pretty much what they did. They practiced qualifying runs and practice just general handling of the trucks. They did that with the Ram trucks. So Tony Stewart felt pretty uncomfortable at the start of this race as well. And we'll talk about Tony Stewart in a second. And Cleetus McFarland obviously felt really uncomfortable. And you just don't know what you don't know. And that's what happened there with Cleetus. Just doesn't have any experience. I personally want him to come back. I've definitely seen some people online think the opposite, is like, this guy's a joke or something like that. And it's like, dude, this guy has not really any experience in professional racing. He's done some amateur races. He's done the Crown Vic stuff, and he's done a bunch of amateur racing, but he has zero experience at a track like this. He's only raced at a track like this in ARCA, and ARCA cars, they're a lot more secure. They don't get sideways. They don't get nearly as loose as the trucks do, or the Cup cars do, or even the O'Reilly Series cars do. But he doesn't have any experience. He has zero experience. And I would like for him to come back out and get some more experience, because he definitely showed some speed. I personally would like for him to race more than just super speedways. I don't necessarily want. I'm not against him doing full time. It's just he does so much stuff outside of racing. I wouldn't expect him to do full time, but I personally would like for him to do more races at some different tracks, because if he does some of these different speedways, he could be a lot better at handling the race truck. But just a lack of experience, wasn't quite sure going into it how his truck was going to handle in the draft. I think he knew that it was going to be a little bit looser, but I didn't think he quite knew how loose and mishandling the truck may be compared to the ARCA car, because the ARCA car, like I said, is a lot more secure than the truck. But he lost it, just flat out lost it. I know he felt embarrassed about it. Personally, I don't think he should feel embarrassed about it. He has no experience, and it is what it is. And you get experience by being in the moment. So that's how I feel about that. Obviously, y'all have heard me go on about some drivers making mistakes like this and getting on them about it and be like, come on, man, you're a professional. You can't be doing that. But those are usually drivers like a Natalie Decker, which we'll talk about in a little bit, or a Chris Wright, which we won't talk about him today. But usually I'm talking about drivers like that because get on drivers like that. I mean, because they have a lot of experience. They've done all this before. They've raced these cars before many times. Cleetus had zero experience in draft. He hasn't done any race laps, and there could be the argument made maybe he shouldn't have been out there. And I could hear that argument. I could hear that argument, but at the same time, he shouldn't just go away. Like we want him to come back. I think most NASCAR fans want to see Cleetus McFarland, aka Garrett Mitchell, in a truck more often because of the energy he brings, because of the eyes he brings. He brings in different sponsors. He brings in a bunch of different things. And at the same time, he kind of has that old school racer mindset in a way where he just wants to go out there and run fast. And he also talks in the interviews like how he wants to talk. He's not put in a box like a lot of drivers are. I think we're beginning to break that box with everything that happened in the off season and the Hell Yeah campaign and all that, but still, you get what I'm saying. So I hope Cleetus comes back. I really do. But let me know your thoughts about Cleetus McFarland, and do you think he should come back next year? Not next year, for a couple more races this year in the Craftsman Truck Series. I know he has 6 or 7 ARCA races planned for this season. All right, I said I was going to talk about smoke. Let's get to a little bit of Tony Stewart talk. Tony Stewart, first of all, Tony Stewart seemed like he had a blast. It seemed like Smoke had a phenomenal time this weekend. It seemed like he really enjoyed himself being back involved with NASCAR, back at Daytona, back at the racetrack with a lot of his friends. He was even hanging out on Sunday for the Daytona 500, which honestly I didn't expect. I personally expected him to be home already by that point. I didn't expect him to be hanging out for the Daytona 500. So I personally thought that was really cool. And obviously he struggled. He first of all, he doesn't really have a lot of experience in the truck either. He has hardly any experience in the Craftsman truck, and most of his races are like short tracks. Like he had a lot of success at Richmond in a truck, but he's never even raced a Craftsman truck at a super speedway before this weekend. So it was struggles for him. Plus Ram joining in, and I'll talk a little bit more about Ram in a second. But he struggled. He was definitely struggling in the car. He was getting a little frustrated, and then during the race, some of you may have saw that he just backed away off. He just had such a mishandling truck, or handling that he wasn't necessarily expecting from his truck. And I think he finally began to figure it out once we got towards the end of the first stage. And then, of course, in stage 2, near the end of stage 2, I think, Jake Garcia got a little bit loose and then just came up into him. Jake Garcia just flat out wrecked Smoke and himself. Tony Stewart had a lot of damage, and he said over the radio, it's like, he pretty much said on the radio, I don't want to ride around with a destroyed truck many laps down. That's no fun for me, so let's just park this thing. And they were like, yeah, let's just park this thing then. And that's what they did. And they even talked about on the radio how, well, the crew chief asked on the radio, said on the radio, hopefully we see you come back, something along those lines. And Tony Stewart, I think, definitely left the door open for him to come back. And I personally expect him to come back. I think he got the bug again this weekend, especially seeing the Daytona 500 stuff, because I didn't think he was going to stay for the Daytona 500. I didn't think he was going to be there, but he was. So I think he has the bug. I think he's going to come back this year at some point. My personal early prediction is that he'll be racing the San Diego Street Course on that Friday in front of all our military members on the street course. That's my prediction. No one has any experience at that track. Plus, Tony Stewart is one of the best road course racers in the history of NASCAR. So that's my early prediction, is that we'll see Smoke there. I don't know if the trucks are racing Richmond, but if they are racing Richmond, I would expect to maybe see him there as well. He had a lot of success at Richmond in the Craftsman truck years ago. So hopefully we see Smoke again this year. I think we will. But let me know your thoughts about Smoke and a potential another return. And real quickly, we'll talk about Ram. I was really excited to see Ram come back. I just talked about Smoke, and he had some struggles for sure. But I was very excited to see Ram come back. I'm excited with everything they're doing with the free agent car. I love the free agent car. You had Tony Stewart in for Daytona. For Echo Park Speedway, you're going to have Ty Dillon in the car. I think a lot of people were like, oh, that's not exciting. And it's like, dude, you just had Tony Stewart in the car. I don't think you're really going to match up to that standard. And also, Ty Dillon is a very competitive super speedway drafting track sort of racer. He's also had success at Atlanta or Echo Park in the truck series. So I think it's a good pull. And I honestly think Ty Dillon could be fairly competitive and maybe even compete for the win at Echo Park Speedway this weekend. So I think that's a good pull. Everything they did with the Ram race for the seat. Mini Tyrell obviously struggled. He's never raced on a track even close to Daytona this weekend. Plus, he's never raced in a truck before. I think he really did the best he could. He ended up getting a top 20 in his debut. So I'm happy for Mini. Mini seemed like he had a good time this weekend for the most part, even though he obviously struggled in the truck race. I was about to say the O'Reilly series. And the ARCA race when he was driving the Ram Chevrolet, which was hilarious, by the way. He didn't have the best run either, but it seemed like he was out there just soaking it all in, gaining the experience, whether it's the off-track stuff or the on-track stuff, just really gaining all the experience he needs. I think it's going to take him a couple weeks, couple races to really get into it. Butterbean ran well. He was running top 10 most of the race, ended up getting a top 10 finish. So good on Butterbean, Brendan Queen. Daniel Dye, I think Daniel Dye was pretty quiet most of the day, but I think he ended up having a good finish. I think he ended up getting like right around 15th, like just outside. I don't have the results right in front of me. I think he finished like right outside the top 15, so my bad if I got that wrong. And then Justin Haley, he ended up leading the most laps in the Fresh from Florida 250. He had a great race. I thought he had a legitimate chance of getting the victory. Obviously, he didn't, and he wasn't even the highest finisher for Ram, but he had a phenomenal race nonetheless. So a great weekend for Ram, for Colleague, and I'm very excited to see what they bring throughout the rest of the season. But let me know your thoughts on Ram being back in the Truck Series. A couple more things when it comes to the trucks, and then we'll move on to the O'Reilly Series. This one should be a real quick one. Kaden Honeycutt, John Hunter Nemechek, Gio Ruggiero. Kaden Honeycutt led coming into the final lap. Kaden had a great race. I think a lot of people were really putting him up to a high standard because of what he did last season, plus him taking over for Corey Heim. Corey Heim might have just had the greatest season in the history of the Craftsman Truck Series. So there's a lot of pressure on Kaden Honeycutt. And he performed. He ran well all day. He ended up being my race day pick. He wasn't my pick going into the weekend, but once we got to race day, he was my pick on that day. And he ran well. He ran well all race long. Couldn't quite get the victory, but I think the future's bright for the 11 car. And then to John Hunter versus Gio Ruggiero. Gio ran great. He ran great in that race, plus in the ARCA race, plus in the O'Reilly. He ran well in all three races. In the O'Reilly race, he ended up getting taken out and finishing at the back. Gio ended up winning the ARCA race, if I'm correct. He ended up winning the ARCA race in a pretty entertaining finish over there, and then came so close to winning the Truck Series race at Daytona. Came so very close, and the difference maker ended up being John Hunter Nemechek, who, in my opinion, John Hunter Nemechek had this race in the bag. In my opinion, I thought John Hunter Nemechek had this race in the bag right before we got to the trial. I'm like, yep, John Hunter got this. But he made the big mistake of just hyper-focusing on Gio. I think that's that's what happened and why Chandler Smith ended up getting that bottom lane. John Hunter just hyper-focused on Gio and just wanted to pull him back as much as possible and wanted to make sure that Gio wouldn't beat him to the line. But him doing that opened the door for Chandler Smith, who had a huge run and just drove right past and ended up winning the damn thing. So I think that was a huge mistake on John Hunter Nemechek's part. A huge mistake on John Hunter Nemechek's part. And I know he was kicking himself afterwards, and I think a lot of people were giving him shit on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, and all over social media. John Hunter Nemechek essentially shot himself in the foot when it came to him hyper-focusing on Gio, because that ended up being the difference maker between him winning the race and losing, because I think he would have won. I think he would have won if he just didn't hyper-focus on Gio and he just raced his race. And he didn't race his race. He hyper-focused on Gio, and it opened the door up for the Fishmobile, Chandler Smith. Chandler Smith ended up taking the dub. Good on Chandler Smith. Any of you that have followed me for a certain amount of time know that I'm a pretty big supporter of Chandler Smith. Obviously had everything that happened in his personal life last year. A lot of stuff came out. A lot of people began to look at him quite differently. But it seems like they're okay now, him and his wife and his family. So I'm real happy for them. And to just see Chandler, and he's also just really, he hasn't really struggled in his career. He's just really struggled finding for sure ride. And this is his second year now over at Front Row Motorsports, full-time in the Truck Series. I became a fan of him when he was over at Kyle Busch Motorsports. Even when he came over the radio and was like, I tell Kyle Busch to stay in his hauler, even though I'm a Rowdy fan, I thought that was hilarious and just awesome of him. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Chandler, and to see him go to victory lane and a pretty emotional win and came out of nowhere victory as well. Like I was saying with John Hunter Nemechek, John Hunter Nemechek probably should have won that race, but hyper focused on Gio. So Chandler Smith in one of the goofiest looking cars I've ever seen. It was literally a pea green car with just a big fish on the side, and that's branding. That's what we call branding. I think it was Tracker Fisher or Tracker Fish or something like that. It was some sort of fish tracking. So maybe it wasn't that great because I don't remember exactly what the sponsor was, but just a great finish, a great moment for Chandler Smith starting off this season. And Front Row Motorsports is a threat to win the championship with Chandler Smith. One thing that, before I forget, one thing that I wanted to bring up earlier that I forgot, one thing that was pretty cool, the three biggest people in this court case that we had with NASCAR in the offseason all won this weekend. We had Front Row Motorsports on Friday. We had Richard Childress winning on Saturday, and then on Sunday we had 2311 Racing. So I thought that was pretty cool. Just a little note there. But let me know your thoughts on Chandler Smith winning, John Hunter Nemechek and Gio Ruggiero battling coming into the Tri-Oval, and Kaden Honeycutt. What do you think his future is for this season with Tricon? All right, let's move on to the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. Something I hear. Let's move on to the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. Not as much to talk about here as we do when it comes to the trucks or the 500. I feel like those had a bunch of storylines, those two races. The O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race, the O'Reilly debut as the sponsor, as the primary sponsor for the secondary series, the Grand National Series. Overall, I think was a good race, but completely dominated by Richard Childress Racing. I don't think anybody was able to hold a candle to Austin Hill or Jesse Love all day, and we'll talk more about that at the very end. But first, I do want to talk about that incident that we saw in turns 1 and 2, where Sam Mayer just got completely obliterated by Natalie Decker. I don't know what else to say about Natalie Decker. I'm not a big fan of Natalie Decker at all. I don't think she has any skill. She's been around for years at this point. And is she a better driver than me? Yeah. I guarantee she's a better race car driver than me and most people, for sure. But she just struggles. She doesn't really even get the basics, I feel like, the fundamentals of this. And she just completely arc-braked going into that wreck. Was going, if I had to guess, above 130, maybe above 140, maybe even 150. Coming through turn 2, just flying on the high side, comparatively speaking, because most people are slowed down, if not stopped at that point. The wreck happened 5 to 10 seconds before she came through there, and she was saying in an interview, oh, it was too late, and try to blame the spotter, it seemed like. Even I'm just not a fan of her at all. I don't think she has, like I said, I don't think she has any skill. Just comes flying into that wreck. We see that out of drivers that don't have any experience. But even someone, for example, I was talking about Cleetus earlier. Even someone like Cleetus, I don't see Cleetus doing that. I can't see Cleetus doing what she did in that situation, and did not really take any accountability for the wreck. I just think it made it way worse. I personally don't want to see her in a stock car or in a stock truck anymore. I just don't. I don't want to see her at all. I don't want to see her touching a truck or an O'Reilly car or an ARCA car at all. I didn't like what she did at all. And I don't really like the way she just really handles her business either. She really just uses her sexuality to gain sponsorship and gain likeness. She doesn't bring any personality to the sport. She is kind of embarrassing on the sport. All of us have seen the Matt Tifft little short video, little cut from his podcast about her talking about her and Derek. I'm not going to get into all that. That's not racing, but you get what I'm saying. I think she's a sore spot on the sport, and that is my opinion. I think some people will hold that same opinion. It might be a little bit harsh, but I'm just being honest. It's my truth, and I personally just don't think she should be in NASCAR at all. That's just my opinion. But let me know your thoughts about Natalie Decker and that wreck that we saw. All right, now we'll move on towards the end of the race, as we do have a couple of things to talk about here at the end of the race. First of all, Justin Allgaier and Brennan Poole. I mentioned earlier, Justin Allgaier still didn't win the season opener at Daytona. I know it's something he's wanted for a while, something that's eluded him for a while, and came just short once again. Looked like he was trying to help Brennan Poole, gave him a bad bump. That would have been super cool to see Brennan Poole win. I've been following Brennan Poole for years. He seems like someone that just always gets the very most out of his equipment and has so much experience at this point at all levels of NASCAR. So that would have been really cool to see him win, especially with the new sponsorship and everything on the number 44 for Alpha Prime. And Brennan Poole had a great year last year. Allgaier just gave him a bad bump. There was no hard feelings about it. They talked about it on pit road and laughed about it. And Justin Allgaier took full accountability on that. You should pay attention, Natalie Decker. Justin Allgaier took full accountability on causing that and pretty much costing them both really any chance at winning the race. Because in my opinion, once that happened, I think it was over and done with. I don't think anybody had a chance at Austin Hill at that point once that happened. No one could hold a candle to Austin Hill all race long, or even Jesse Love. And I think that was their best opportunity because there was 3 or 4 of them out front of the field. They had separation on the rest of the field, and if all those drivers turned against Austin Hill, I think they could have had a chance of beating him. I'm still not sure if they even would have beat him, even if they all worked together to pass Austin Hill, because that car is just crazy. But let me know your thoughts on the Justin Allgaier, Brennan Poole almost wreck, and Allgaier coming just short of winning at Daytona once again. All right, before we talk about Austin Hill and RCR a little bit more, I quickly want to go through the Carson v. Carson situation and talk about Hocevar's. We'll talk more about Hocevar's weekend in general once we get to the 500 talk. But I didn't see no video personally. I'm going to take Carson Ware's judgment, or his opinion on this one, I should say. I'm going to take his opinion on this one because I don't see him lying about all that stuff. So I'm just going to believe what he said when it came to this exact situation. And from what it sounds like to me is that Carson Ware wasn't trying to get into a wreck. He was trying to play it safe. He was trying to maybe lag back at the end of the race, something we saw with Kyle Busch at the end of the 500 on the last lap. He just backed it down because he didn't want to be involved in a wreck. And it sounds like that's something that Carson Ware was kind of trying to do at the very end of this race, but he had Carson Hocevar on his bumper, and Hocevar got irritated that he slowed him up and cost him a couple positions. So apparently after the checkered flag, Carson Hocevar flipped him off, which I don't care about. It sounded like Carson Ware didn't really care about getting flipped off either. I personally don't care about that. I don't mind that. It's going to happen. We see it. If you're paying attention, it happens a couple of times every race. Somebody's sticking a middle finger out the window at somebody. But this is where I had the problem with, and this is where Carson Ware got so pissed at him and got up in his face on pit road. I didn't think either of them were ever going to throw a punch in that situation, but kind of like an EA Sports NASCAR career mode sort of argument right there, them just ranting back and forth. Hocevar took no accountability. If this is exactly what happened, Hocevar took zero accountability and also pretended like he didn't know what had happened. Maybe Carson Ware got Hocevar confused with another car, potentially. I guess I'll hold that as a potential. But like I said, I'm gonna believe Carson Ware in this situation. But after the checkered flag, after he flipped him off, apparently Hocevar doored him after the checkered flag, damaging Carson Ware's vehicle, which that's not cool, man. That's not cool. I could see it maybe if Carson Ware had put Hocevar in the wall, or maybe spun him out on the last lap or something like that. I can see that perspective on why Hocevar would then door him after the checkered flag. But just because he was trying to stay out of the wreck and not damage his car after the checkered flag, you're going to damage his car. I'm not for that. I don't like that. If that's what Hocevar ended up doing, I respect Carson Ware for standing on business, which is probably the first time I've ever said I respect Carson Ware. But Carson Ware seems very serious about this. he also he stood on business for his team. He didn't want his team to do all those repairs and have to put more money into the car. They're not a highly funded race team. Hocevar brings in a lot of sponsorship, and I think that's what he was trying to argue to Hocevar in that scenario. Is like, you don't do that. You're not hurting me. You're hurting my team. And I think that's what Carson Ware was trying to tell Hocevar. But Hocevar took zero accountability and acted like it didn't even happen, which is the only reason why I hold on to a small percentage chance that maybe Carson Ware had the 42 confused with a different car on the grid. But nonetheless, if that is what Hocevar did, it's kind of a dickhead move, if you ask me. But let me know your thoughts on Carson v. Carson. All right, let's get to the end of this race. This episode is going on so long. Let's get to the end of this race. Austin Hill, Richard Childress Racing. Austin Hill, completely dominant. I don't know what else to really say that hasn't been said about Richard Childress Racing and Austin Hill in particular in the O'Reilly Auto Parts series. They have something figured out. They really do. And I'm not sitting here. I know people are going to come at me. I'm not sitting here saying that Austin Hill is not a good super speedway racer. He is. He's a great super speedway racer. All the moves and the blocks and everything that he's able to pull. He's clearly a very talented super speedway racer, but RCR have something figured out. They have something figured out with their cars, which is either something that nobody in the garage knows about, a certain adjustment to the car that no one in the garage has quite figured out yet, that RCR is just ahead of the game on, or they are doing old-fashioned NASCAR, and if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying, and they have something on that car that NASCAR just hasn't figured out yet. It's one of those two things. It has to be. And like I said, I'm not sitting here saying Austin Hill's not a good super speedway racer. He is a great super speedway racer. He's the best super speedway racer in the O'Reilly series nonetheless. But him just hanging out at times, he was just hanging out a car length or two in front of the field, and the field couldn't even drive up to his bumper at times. It was just wild. I felt like I was watching Jean Girard sipping his macchiato at the front of the field. That's what I felt like watching Austin Hill all day long. Jesse Love definitely had speed as well, and when he got out front, you saw how much speed he had as well. But Austin Hill is just on a different level. He was the class of the field by far. Like I said, I don't think anybody could hold a candle to him. That's why I was saying a couple of minutes ago when it came to Allgaier and Brennan Poole, and I think Jordan Anderson, when it came to those guys, even if all three of them lined up and there wasn't a bad bump from Justin Allgaier to Brennan Poole, and it was all three of them just versus Austin Hill, I'm still not sure if they would have beat him to the line, because Austin Hill would have side drafted him. I don't know what it is. They have something figured out. Round of applause to RCR, because they are geniuses over there when it comes to super speedways. I wish we were able to win the 500 with Kyle Busch, but that's not RCR's fault at all. And we'll talk more about that later when we get to the 500. But Hill, the 21 team, RCR in general, have something just really, really figured out over there for the O'Reilly series at Daytona, at Talladega, at Atlanta. They just have something figured out. Whether that's within the parameters of the rule book or not, I'm leaning towards it's within the parameters of the rule book, because I feel like NASCAR would have figured it out by now with all the technology they have. This has been going on for years now, where we've had just pure domination from Austin Hill. So I just really think the engineers and everybody working over at RCR are just top of the line and are just doing the best adjustments possible, and the rest of the O'Reilly series field just hasn't figured out what they've figured out. You just don't know what you don't know, and that's what's kind of going on with a lot of the other teams. So that's why we keep on seeing Austin Hill pure domination. No one's able to touch him, and he got another victory at a super speedway and leads the points by around a half a race. For some people, a full race, having a 25-point advantage heading into Echo Park Speedway. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. What do you think about the Austin Hill RCR domination we've seen at super speedways and this past weekend in the United Rentals 300. All right, let's get to the Great American Race now. Final race of the weekend, the Great American Race, the 68th running of the Daytona 500. And one thing I do have to note before we even got to the start of this race, I think NASCAR pulled a phenomenal move. They ended up moving the race up a whole hour. So instead of it starting at what would have been a little bit after 4, they ended up starting the race a little bit after 2. And I think this was just a great call. First of all, the race finished before the sun was completely down. And don't get me wrong, I don't mind. I personally actually like a lot of the times when we finish under the lights because of the cool pictures we get, the cool visuals and everything that we get that comes from finishing a race under the lights. But it finishing an hour earlier also helps a lot of people get out of the racetrack. I've been to Daytona before. I remember it was really difficult to get out of that racetrack. That was also for the summer race, not for the Daytona 500. So, and it seemed like they packed that place in yesterday. They had over 150,000 people there yesterday, and they had almost 500,000 people show up throughout the weekend. So very impressive numbers, and NASCAR usually doesn't release those numbers, so that was really cool to see if that is accurate. So that was really cool to see. So them ending the race an hour earlier is very helpful to traffic and the fans and everything getting home. But the big reason why it ended up being such a big deal this weekend is they ended up beating the rain by roughly around 2 hours. So the rain ended up showing up around 2 hours post checkered flag, and it was a downpour. I think they probably could have dried off the track with how early it still was in the day. I think they would have had time to dry off the track, but it would have taken maybe 2.5 hours to dry off the track because the track got completely soaked around 2 hours after the checkered flag. So I think that was a really good move, them moving it up an hour. And I think pretty much all races should run around the time that they started that race. Obviously, I want some night races thrown in there for sure. I would love a big handful, not a small handful. I want a big handful of some night races as well thrown in there. Maybe even a couple of day 2 night races in there as well. But for the most part, I want most of the schedule starting around 1 to 2 o'clock for every daytime Sunday race. That's just the way I feel about it. That's what I think they should do. Have a half hour to an hour pre-race, have a really long post-race. I think that's the way to do it. And I think NASCAR made a really good call moving it up an hour. But let me know your thoughts about them moving it up an hour. All right, let's move on to the incidents that we had in the race, because obviously other than the last lap, we'll talk about the last lap afterwards. But we had 3 incidents, I think 3 big incidents, I would say, in this race. The first one I would say is coming off of turn 4. We had Cody Ware make contact with Ross Chastain coming off of turn 4. They were reacting to Connor Zilisch. Looked like Zilisch got a little loose and was really struggling with the car. Just a lack of experience in the next-gen car at a super speedway. Just really trying to figure it out. Zilisch was getting loose, and everybody was being reactive towards him, so they ended up wrecking off the corner. Zilisch ended up wrecking. Austin Dillon had his car totaled. I think he could have been a contender for the win. And then Chase Briscoe, who started second and looked like he may have had the car to beat. In my opinion, early on in this event, it looked like Chase Briscoe had the car to beat, and he ended up getting caught up in this wreck, which ruined his race. He ended up going over 10 laps down before he came back onto the racetrack. Just real unfortunate for Briscoe. And then we'll move on to the second big wreck that I would like to talk about, and that is Justin Allgaier, Denny Hamlin on the front straightaway. I was more disappointed about this move from Allgaier than anything, because Justin Allgaier is probably one of the last people I would expect to make the dumb move that he made, and that's what it was. I'm going to just say it frank. It was a dumb move on Justin Allgaier's part, and I think he took accountability on that. It wasn't a good move. He took accountability on on the radio. His spotter even tried to cover for him a little bit on the radio. It's like, I think I told him. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, he told me. Yeah. So he took full accountability on the wreck. He just didn't move to the top quick enough or whatever. It was just a dumb move. And he ended up taking out most of the field on this incident. I think I've seen a very small handful of people try to say, oh, Denny Hamlin shouldn't be putting his nose there. Well, I don't think Denny Hamlin was expecting Allgaier to come all the way up across his nose and wreck the whole field. I don't think that's what was expected in that scenario, and that's pretty much what he did. I don't know if any of you have seen that clip from Family Guy where it's like, oh, good luck everybody else, and she just turns across the highway and wrecks everybody. That is what Justin Allgaier did in that scenario and took out most of the field, which, like I said, it's a shame. I'm disappointed because Justin Allgaier is a very smart driver. He's very experienced. I've never seen him do anything even close to that. Obviously, he's made mistakes, but I've never seen him do something like that, even close to that. So that was very disappointing to see, especially after leading a couple laps in the Daytona 500 with Junior Motorsports, having Chris Stapleton at the racetrack as well. It was supposed to be an amazing day for Junior Motorsports and Dale Jr., and I think it still was. Because they made the Daytona 500. They led laps. They were very competitive, but the way it ended, I don't think it was the way that anybody wanted it to end, including myself, because I'm a huge fan of Justin Allgaier, huge fan of Dale Earnhardt Jr., huge fan of Chris Stapleton, and to see that happen was, like I said, I'm just more disappointed than anything. I just wouldn't expect Justin Allgaier, out of all people, to pull a move like that. Let me know your thoughts about that incident in particular. Then the wreck that ended up setting up the end of this race pretty much was the Joe Gibbs Racing wreck. We had Christopher Bell and we had Denny Hamlin, who both had pretty tough days, especially Denny. Denny obviously getting caught up in that wreck with Allgaier along with Kyle Busch. I think that's what ended up taking Kyle Busch out of winning potential, was that wreck with Allgaier. He just had too much damage. But getting back to the Hamlin-Bell wreck, they just took each other out, essentially. It looked like a bad bump. That's what it looked like to me. It looks like we got a bad bump, and then we had both those JGR cars end their day. It was an extremely tough day for Joe Gibbs Racing. Ty Gibbs was quiet as a mouse all race long. Christopher Bell and Denny Hamlin obviously had their issues, and then I talked about Chase Briscoe, probably had the car to beat, ended up getting wrecked out early on in the event. So very tough day for Joe Gibbs Racing, I would say, which is the opposite of their counterparts at 2311, who had probably the best day in the history of their race team. But Joe Gibbs Racing, tough day for them. Tough day for Denny Hamlin, the driver, but great day for Denny Hamlin, the owner, in Daytona. But let me know your thoughts on any of those incidents in the comments. Okay, let's get to the last lap, and then we'll talk about how we feel about the Reddick 2311 Michael Jordan victory that we had. We'll talk about this last lap here. Carson Hocevar looked like he had a great chance at winning the Daytona 500, led on the white flag. And overall, it was just such a tough weekend for Carson Hocevar. He lost a right rear tire multiple times in the Truck Series race. I think he spun out 3 or 4 times in that race. He spun out in the O'Reilly race. He almost got into a fight with Carson Ware on pit road. And it looked like, for the 500 for a second there, it looked like all his heartache and all the difficulties he faced all weekend long, including coming just short of winning the dual race as well, looked like it was all going to pay off with a Daytona 500 victory for his first career win. Ended up getting spun out on the front straightaway. It looked like he got a bad bump from Eric Jones in that situation. You're going for the Daytona 500. That's just going to happen. That's just the nature of the beast at the end of these super speedway races, especially the Daytona 500, because everybody wants to win the Great American Race. And Hocevar got spun from the lead. We'll talk more about NASCAR not throwing the caution here in a second, but just feel for Carson Hocevar, feel for the Carson Hocevar fans. I know that Hocevar is becoming one of the most popular drivers in the Cup Series right now, and he's garnering a lot of new fans. He's bringing a lot of new fans in with all the other stuff he does, whether that's Twitch, whether that's just hanging out in the grandstands, whether that's doing stuff with Cleetus. No matter what, he's gaining Hocevar or Hocevar, as I love Pastrana calling him Hocevar. Uh, he's a popular guy, so I definitely feel bad for his fans, and I feel bad for Hocevar because Hocevar just had, let's be honest, a shitty weekend. Everything, like I said, everything happened in the truck race, the O'Reilly race, and then to get wrecked from the lead in the Daytona 500. I feel for the kid, and I think he has a bright future. Though I've said it many times, I think he's going to win many races in the Cup Series. I think he is going to win a race this year at some point. Not sure where that's going to be, but I think he will win at least one, if not two, races this season. The kid is just way too talented. Just needs to clean up the edges a little bit, and I think he's going to be completely dominant. And now I'll talk quickly about the no caution. Round of applause for NASCAR not throwing the caution in that scenario. And for the most part, all weekend long, they were very consistent with this, which is something they've lacked mightily. Anytime they go to a super speedway, they just kind of pick. Usually when we go to a super speedway, they just pick and choose what the caution is for. So hopefully this past weekend is consistent going forward, where we only throw a caution if we absolutely need to. In that scenario, we had a big accident coming out of the tri-oval. Most of the cars slid to the bottom of the track and slid up into turns 1 and 2. So there was enough time for drivers to slow down, so they let them race out the final lap, which is something they were consistent with the truck race, O'Reilly Series race, and the Cup Series race all weekend long, which, like I said, is something that NASCAR has just completely lacked. So hopefully going forward, they're able to continue to do this when it comes to cautions and not throwing them out, and only throwing them out when it's absolutely necessary. So round of applause for NASCAR on that one as well. So let's get to this battle that we had at the end of the race here, because we had a great race to the finish. It looked like Chase Elliott was going to get the Daytona 500. The Chase Sexuals were going to be very, very happy. It looked like they were going to get the job done. And then Reddick just had a hell of a run on Zane Smith, jumped to the high side, had the help from Riley Herbst. Riley Herbst was the key to all this. I would like to say that. Reddick doesn't win this race if he doesn't have Riley Herbst behind him. Herbst didn't give him like the biggest push in the history of time or something like that, but he gave him a good enough push where he was able to get free and battle with Elliott to win the race. Reddick was on the high side, dived to the bottom, was able to get past Chase Elliott to win the Daytona 500. And then behind them, we had an incident with Herbst, Brad Keselowski. I'm real happy Brad K was okay, by the way, because he didn't take a big hit, but with him already being previously injured going into that, him getting out of the car and feeling fine, that's awesome to see. Same thing with Chase Elliott. Chase Elliott getting wrecked across the line. I think he ended up finishing 4th. Him getting wrecked across the line and hitting the wall the way he did and as hard as he did. And seeing him get out of the car, it looked like to me personally, he looked to be in a little bit of discomfort sitting on the wall after that incident. So I was really glad to see that he didn't have any injuries. It seemed like he might have just gotten the wind knocked out of him, if anything. That was just a really gnarly hit, so I was happy to see that he was okay after that big wreck. Happy to see that Brad K was okay after that big wreck. But Reddick ended up winning the race in a phenomenal moment, and I'll talk more about that moment in a second. Right before that, I'm going to talk quickly about the wreck just a little bit more, because Brad Keselowski went off in his interview. He went completely off on Riley Herbst, calling it a dumb move, a stupid move, just really going off on Riley Herbst. And I think Brad K maybe should have chilled out a little bit in his interview. They're going for the Daytona 500. I don't know what you really expect in that scenario, but at the same time, he's right. At the same time, Brad K is right. It was, in a way, a dumb move because he ended up wrecking the field. But if he doesn't pull that move, who knows? Maybe Reddick doesn't win the 500. He's trying to be a good teammate. He's trying to throw the block. Me personally, I've heard Brad K's argument how he thinks he could have still won the 500. I personally don't think he would have gotten there, but there's definitely a chance. There's definitely a chance that he could have gotten there if Herbst doesn't attempt to pull that bad block. But I don't know. Like I said before, I don't know what Brad K really expected. You're racing for the Daytona 500. These things happen every single time. They come through the tri-oval in the Daytona 500. It's just part of the game. It's part of the race. It's a part of it. It is just what happens. Is it still a dumb move? Yes. It's still a dumb move because you wrecked a lot of race cars doing that. Potentially could have re-injured Brad K, could have injured NASCAR's most popular driver. So yes, it was a dumb move, but it's also come to be expected at the end of these races. And that would be my argument towards Brad K is like, yeah, he pulled a stupid move, but what do you expect? It's the great American race and everybody's battling to win the race. Like, who knows? Maybe if Herbst moves up a second earlier and actually pulls the full block on Brad K, maybe Riley Herbst ends up winning the Daytona 500. Maybe he gets a bad bump, wrecks Reddick, and the whole front of the field wrecks. And who knows who wins the Daytona 500? Maybe Kyle Busch ends up winning the 500 after lagging back. Who knows? Who knows? So I don't blame Riley for the move. It is what it is. It's just what's going to happen. Was it a dumb move? Yeah. But it's the end of the Daytona 500. It's what's going to happen. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. How did you feel about those last lap incidents with Hocevar, Chase Elliott, Brad K, and then Riley Herbst? Are you feeling as harsh as Brad K? Let me know in the comments. All right, this episode has gone on extremely long, so let's finish this here with one more thing to talk about, and that, of course, is our winner and our celebration with 2311 Racing and Tyler Reddick. It was awesome. It was awesome. I definitely didn't have on my bingo card going into the race that Tyler Reddick was going to bring the trophy home for 2311 Racing. I think Tyler Reddick is the most talented driver at 2311 Racing, but he obviously struggled pretty hard last year. I personally don't see him as that great of a super speedway racer. Even though he did win Talladega, you have to keep in mind pretty much everybody wrecked in front of him for him to win that race. I considered Bubba Wallace to be the favorite. I personally considered, and it might sound fucked up to say, but I personally considered Tyler Reddick as the fourth guy at 2311 Racing for this race in particular. Bubba Wallace, one of the best super speedway racers in our sport right now. Corey Heim showed great speed all weekend, and he is on a hot streak after his phenomenal Truck Series season. Riley Herbst, I think he's a very talented super speedway racer. I've seen him do it in a Rick Ware car, a front row car, and now a 2311 car. Be very talented and running up in the top 10 most of the day at the super speedway events. While Tyler Reddick, he's struggled at the super speedways for the most part. Like I said, he did get that win at Talladega, but other than that, I haven't really seen much out of him when it comes to super speedways. So I definitely didn't expect him personally to win, but when he did win, I was hyped. I was very hyped about it. I think it was a great moment for the sport, having a driver like Tyler Reddick win this race with everything that happened during last season and in the offseason. I think it's a great American story, no matter which way you look at it when it comes to the winner's circle. You can look at it from the Tyler Reddick perspective, where Tyler Reddick had a very tough year on the track last year, won the regular season championship the year before, is considered to be one of the most pure talented drivers in NASCAR, and honestly just struggled completely on the track last year. I think the best driver at 2311 last year was Bubba. I think Bubba outperformed Reddick last year. I think Reddick is still the more talented guy, but Bubba did outperform him last year. Reddick had a tough year, and also he had a tough year off the track as well. His kid was going through a lot of health issues, respiratory issues, if I'm not mistaken, respiratory and cardio issues with his heart. And so that was really tough. That was probably a huge distraction, which is very understandable. A very tough year for Tyler Reddick. Then he comes out and wins the Daytona 500. Then you can look at the Michael Jordan perspective. Michael Jordan, one of the greatest athletes in American history, one of the most iconic athletes in American history, if not the most iconic or the greatest. Some would even say the greatest athlete in the history of all of sports. Michael Jordan, one of the most iconic people. Everybody knows when you see everybody knows Michael Jordan. You can go to any country, anywhere in the world, everybody knows who Michael Jordan is. And to have him win the Daytona 500 is freaking huge for the sport. I'm seeing people that have never talked about NASCAR or never even close to the NASCAR sphere talking about NASCAR right now, which is freaking awesome. And there's, of course, some people, that video of him messing with Bo, I think it was Bo, messing with Tyler Reddick's kid, pulling on his shirt, scratching the back of his leg, messing with them. I've seen him do stuff like that in Victory Lane with Bo before. He puts ice down. He messes with the kid. I don't think any of y'all go outside. Anybody that's getting on Michael Jordan for that, I don't think any of you go outside. I assume you live on the internet. That's just what I assume for everybody that's posting that. Go get some sunlight or something. I'm not sure. Go look at some clouds. I don't know. But nonetheless, phenomenal moment for the sport. Michael Jordan winning. It's great for the sport. We were on Sports Center, for Pete's sake. We're getting put all over the place. We're on CNN. We're on Fox News, MSNBC. It's going everywhere. If newspapers still existed, we'd be on the front page. Like, we overshadowed the NBA All-Star game. Like, this is awesome. Awesome for the sport. And from that perspective, the 2311 racing perspective, everything that happened with the court case and with NASCAR, people were worried that there was going to be bad blood. Jim France even came into Victory Lane, shook Michael Jordan's hand. So that's great from that perspective. And then, of course, the Denny Hamlin perspective. Denny Hamlin being a 3-time Daytona 500 champion, him having the most difficult offseason that probably anybody has ever had, losing the championship in the fashion that he did. Obviously, everything with the court case ended up being successful at the end of it, but was stressful to go through. And then, of course, the house fire, which ultimately took down his dad, Dennis, who we lost in the offseason. RIP to Dennis. Luckily, his mother, Mary Lou, was able to survive her injuries, was even at the racetrack this weekend, which was really cool to see. And then to have Denny Hamlin get his 4th Daytona 500, this time as an owner, his first Daytona 500 as an owner. I think that's awesome from that perspective as well. So no matter which perspective out of those 4 you look at, I think it's a beautiful, great American story. And I think this is just awesome. NASCAR trying to get back to the top of the pop culture zeitgeist, trying to get back to the top of American sports in general, not just motorsports, but American sports. We want to be competing with the NFL, with college football. Again, we want to be near the top of viewership like we were in the early 2000s. That's what we want as an industry. So to have everything that happened yesterday to happen this weekend was fantastic. We had 3 great races. We had a phenomenal story on Sunday, especially, and we had no rain affect anything. So everything was able to happen on Fox. We didn't have to go to Fox Sports 1. We didn't have to go to Fox Sports 2. We were able to have the whole race on Fox. Just awesome. Awesome weekend. I don't really have many notes on the weekend. I think it was pretty perfect from start to finish. Probably the only negative note I would have is the fuel saving. I'm not big on the fuel saving at the super speedways. I think you should just take out the stage cautions, keep the stage points, award points at the end of the stage, but don't be throwing cautions at the end of the stages. I think a lot of people have made that argument before, but other than that, loved the weekend. Great weekend in Daytona. Great weekend for NASCAR. I'm very happy to be a NASCAR fan here today. I think most people should be very excited about what NASCAR has in store this season. And I think all NASCAR fans should remember what happened in the 68th annual Daytona 500, because I think it's the start of a new era in NASCAR. All right, I've been going on for over an hour here, so that'll do it for this week's edition of Car on the Hauler, my post-race show every week on Tuesdays at noon Eastern Time. I will be getting live on X. Afterwards, it will be posted on YouTube and on Spotify to listen. But tune in live on X as I do this. And every week, we'll go through the weekend winners, the top 10 results, the points from all three series, plus breaking down the major storylines from the Craftsman Trucks, the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, and of course, the NASCAR Cup Series. And next weekend will be Echo Park Speedway, Atlanta Motor Speedway, Hotlanta. We'll have to see how the cars are able to handle there. The track is a little bit different each time they go there. The track is just aging so very much. So I'm very interested to see how NASCAR goes next weekend at Echo Park Speedway. But let me know your thoughts in the comments about everything we talked about here today on this edition of Car on the Hauler. But for now, I'm Trackside Larry saying peace.